There was a fight, and you were not there for it. You were not in the room. You were not part of the conversation. You did not hear the voices rise or feel the specific shift in the air that happens when two people stop being careful with each other and start being honest. But it happened. It is already done. And the ripple of it is moving through your life right now, whether you can feel it yet or not. Someone fought over you, not about something abstract, not about a misunderstanding or a rumor or a version of events that had been distorted beyond recognition. They fought about this specific, real, impossible to keep ignoring thing that one person has been saying about you in private and another person finally refused to accept as the truth. Because it was not the truth. And someone in that room knew it. Stay with me, Virgo, because what came through when I sat with your energy today arrived with an urgency I want to honor by delivering it completely, every layer, every detail. Everything that happened in that room and everything it means for where you are standing right now. You deserve to know the full picture. Let me take you back to the beginning, not the beginning of last night, the beginning of the lie. Because this did not start recently. What I am seeing when I sit with this energy is a pattern that has been in place for a significant amount of time, a story that someone has been telling about you, about how they feel about you, about what you mean to them and what you do not mean to them, and how thoroughly they have moved on from whatever existed or still exists between you. They built this story carefully, brick by brick, with the specific, deliberate intention of someone who understood that if they said it enough times to enough people with enough conviction, eventually even they might start to believe it. They did not believe it. Not once, not for a single day across however long this performance has been running, because you cannot lie about something that does not matter to you. You only need the lie when the truth is too large to hold in public, when the truth would expose something about you that you are not ready to have exposed, when the truth, if it came out, would change everything about how people see you and what they expect from you and what you would then be required to do about it. The truth about how this person feels about you would change everything. So they chose the lie instead. Mm. I want to speak to what this lie actually sounded like because it matters. Because you may have heard versions of it and dismissed them as reasonable or believed them on the surface, even while something deeper in you was registering the dissonance. It sounded like indifference. Clean, convincing, well practiced indifference, the kind that comes with specific language designed to close conversations rather than open them. Things like, I am completely over it. Things like, we were never that serious. Things like, I honestly do not think about them much anymore. Delivered in the tone of someone who has processed something and arrived at peace with it. It was not peace. Peace does not require that much maintenance. Genuine indifference does not need to be defended or repeated or brought up unprompted in rooms where the subject never came up naturally. Real closure does not look like someone making sure everyone around them understands how closed things are. What you were hearing, what the people around this person were hearing, was the sound of someone working very hard to convince everyone, including themselves, that they were fine. They were not fine. Now, let me tell you about the person who pushed back, because this is where the reading gets specific in a way I want you to feel fully. There is someone in the life of this person who has been watching quietly, with the particular patience of someone who does not speak until they have something worth saying. This is not someone who makes noise for the sake of making noise. This is not someone who inserts themselves into other people's situations because they enjoy the drama of it. They are private, observant, the kind of person who files things away rather than announcing them. And over the course of however long this lie has been running, they have been filing. Every moment the story did not add up. Every pause that lasted a half second too long when your name came into the conversation. Every time the eyes did something that the mouth was not doing. Every reaction that was supposed to be neutral but carried something warmer or more complicated than neutral underneath it, they filed all of it. And last night, something tipped the scales. Something was said about you that was not simply the usual maintenance of the usual story. Something that went a step further than indifference into territory that this person was not willing to sit quietly through anymore. So they said something. I want to stay here for a moment because I feel this landing in your body right now, and I want to give it space before we move forward. Someone defended you in a room you were not in, without you asking, without you even knowing it was happening. They heard something said about you that was not true, and they chose not to let it pass. They chose the discomfort of confrontation over the comfort of silence because the lie had gotten loud enough that silence felt like complicity. When was the last time someone did that for you? Let that sit, because this person did not get into that argument for themselves. They got into it because something in them that holds you in genuine regard reached a limit. The limit of what they were willing to allow to be said about someone they believe deserves better than the version of them being offered in that room. That is not nothing. That is one of the more quietly significant things that can happen in the life of another person. Someone choosing your truth over their own comfort without you ever asking them to. Let me speak to what happened in that room because the energy of it came through clearly and I want to deliver it with the detail it deserves. It started as a conversation, not about you specifically, or maybe your name came up naturally in the context of something else entirely, but you entered the space and the person who has been lying did what they always do when you enter a space they were feeling safe in. They reached for the script, the practiced lines, the carefully maintained performance of someone who has moved on completely and feels nothing particularly when your name is spoken. And the person who had been filing things away for all this time said something that stopped the script cold. It might have been as simple as, I do not believe you. It might have been more specific, drawing on something they had observed or something they had been told in a different moment of honesty. Whatever the exact words were, the effect was the same. The performance cracked. And what came out of the crack was not composure, not a better argument, not a more convincing version of the same lie. It was anger, real, uncontrolled, completely revealing anger. The specific kind of anger that only appears when someone names a truth you have been hiding and you are not ready to deal with the naming of it. The anger that is not really about the person in front of you, the anger that is about the corner you have painted yourself into and the way being seen in that corner feels unbearable. They fought. It was not quiet, and it was not clean. Does this feel familiar, Virgo? Not the specific details necessarily, but the underlying shape of it. Have you been sensing something off in the energy around this person? Have you noticed things that did not quite match the story you were being told? Moments where the indifference they were performing did not quite land the way indifference is supposed to land. Let me know in the comments. Tell me if you recognized something when I started describing this. Tell me how long you have been feeling the edge of this without having the words for what you were feeling, because I believe you have known, not from evidence, not from anything anyone told you, but from that quiet, deep, extraordinarily reliable place in you that registers truth even when truth is being worked very hard against. I want to speak to why the lie? Why the performance? Why someone who clearly feels what they feel would go to the lengths they have gone to in order to make sure nobody, including you, could know about it. And I want you to hear this not as an excuse, not as a reason to dismiss what was done or to bypass the very real impact of having someone deny the truth of your significance in their life, but as an explanation, because understanding it is going to give you something useful. This person is afraid, not of you specifically, of what being honest would require of them, of the exposure that comes with having your real feelings known before you know what to do with them, of the specific vulnerability of saying, "This matters to me, you matter to me," and then having to live in the reality of that admission regardless of what the other person does with it. When you admit that something matters, you give it power over you. You cannot unsay it. You cannot retreat back into the comfortable numbness of pretending it is nothing once you have named it as something. And this person has not been ready to give up the option of retreat. The lie was not about you being unimportant. The lie was the signature of someone for whom you are so important that honesty felt like more than they could afford. Let that land the way it needs to land, Virgo. Inhale, because what I want to say next is the part of this reading that I feel most specifically belongs to you, and I want you to be fully present for it. You have been carrying the weight of being someone whose significance in another person's life was being actively denied, and you have been carrying it without the dignity of being told the truth, without the basic courtesy of having someone say to you openly and directly what they actually feel so that you could respond to it or decide what to do with it or simply know where you stand. That is a specific kind of lonely that does not always have a name. The loneliness of being important to someone who will not admit it, of mattering in a way that is being hidden, of existing in someone's life as a central fact that they have built an elaborate structure around concealing. I want to name it because things that are named can be set down, and I feel you have been carrying this one for long enough. Now, what does this mean for what comes next? Because the fight changed something, and I want to be clear about what it changed and what it did not. What it did not change is the feelings themselves. Those were always there. They did not require the fight to exist. They existed quietly and consistently long before anyone in that room said a word about them. What the fight changed is the architecture of the lie. The person who has been maintaining the performance of indifference is now doing so with a significant crack running through it. The person who confronted them knows the performance is a lie, and the person lying knows that they know, which means every future delivery of that same script is happening in front of an audience that has already been told by someone credible that the performance is not real. That is not a sustainable position. For some of you, what this leads to is direct contact, not immediately, not in the next hour or the next day, but soon. An attempt to reach you that carries a different quality than the communications you have been receiving. Something underneath the surface of whatever the words are that signals a shifting, a crack in the usual careful distance. For others, this leads to something more internal in this person first, a private reckoning, a period of sitting with what the fight exposed about the cost of their own dishonesty and what they actually want to do about it. Movement that has not yet become visible to you, but that is changing the conditions from which something visible will eventually emerge. And for others, still, this leads to a conversation not between you and this person, but between you and the person who had the fight, someone who carries new information about what is actually true and who feels in the wake of what happened that you deserve to have access to it. However it arrives, something is moving toward you. The truth always finds its way out, not on anyone's preferred timeline, not in the form anyone planned, but with an inevitability that no amount of careful story management can permanently outrun. I want to speak to something else that came through, Virgo, and I need you to hear this part clearly. Your worth in this situation was never determined by whether this person was willing to admit it. I know that sounds simple. I know it might even sound like something you have told yourself already without it fully landing. But stay with me here, because I want to say it in a specific way that I feel belongs to this moment. You were significant before anyone named it. You were real before anyone was willing to admit it. The fact that someone went to extraordinary lengths to build and maintain a story about not caring about you is itself the loudest possible confirmation of how deeply they do. People do not construct elaborate performances of indifference about things that are actually indifferent to them. They simply do not think about those things. They are forgotten naturally, without effort, without maintenance. The maintenance this person has been putting into the performance of not caring about you is the most honest thing they have done regarding you in a very long time. Read that again if you need to. Let me speak to your nervous system for a moment before we close, because I feel it and I want to address it directly. There is a part of you that is tempted right now to do something, to reach out, to say something, to use this information as a catalyst for a conversation you have perhaps been wanting to have for a longer time than you have admitted to yourself. The temptation makes complete sense. When you receive confirmation of something you have been sensing in the dark, the instinct is to move toward the light immediately, to close the distance, to stop waiting for someone else to be brave enough to say what you have both been circling around for this long. I want to gently ask you to wait, not forever, not even for very long, but long enough to let what happened last night settle into its new shape before you try to navigate it. What occurred in that room created movement. Real, undeniable, already in progress movement. And movement that has been set into motion does not need to be pushed from behind. It needs space to arrive at its own destination. The most powerful position you can hold right now is stillness, the knowing kind, the kind that does not require you to announce what you know or force anything open before it is ready to open. Let the crack in the performance do what cracks always do. Let it spread on its own. Let this person arrive at the conclusion that the fight has already begun, pushing them toward, without your hand accelerating the timeline. What is coming is already coming. Your silence in the days ahead is not weakness, it is not resignation. It is the specific, strategic, deeply Virgo choice to let what is already in motion finish moving before you step into the space it is clearing for you. That space is being cleared right now. Trust it. As I bring this reading to its close, I want to leave you with something that is yours to carry forward, regardless of what this person does next. You are not waiting for their honesty to know your own value. What happened in that room last night, without your participation, without your knowledge, without a single word from you, is evidence of something that was always true, that you matter, that your presence in people's lives creates ripples you cannot always see, that someone who has spent significant energy trying to convince everyone, including themselves, that they feel nothing about you, actually feels something so substantial that it required a fight to contain. You did not cause that fight by doing anything wrong. You caused it simply by being who you are. By being someone whose significance in another person's interior life became too large to keep quietly managed. That is not a burden, Virgo. That is information. The question is not whether you are important to this person. That question has been answered loudly in a room you were not in by someone who knew enough to push back on the lie. The question now is simply what you want to do with knowing it. And that question belongs entirely to you. Leave me a comment below. Tell me how long you have been sensing this. Tell me whether you recognized the person I was describing the moment I started speaking about them. Tell me what it felt like to hear the truth of this situation named out loud. I read every single word, every story you share, I carry with genuine care. Until next time, Virgo, the truth was always there. It just needed someone brave enough to say it out loud in a room where the lie had gotten too comfortable. That someone showed up, and what they said cannot be unsaid.